quite a big crowd here tonight. Our guest this evening is no stranger to American politics. Indeed, politics have been her lifelong passion, and she started her career early. Her first campaign was on behalf of a candidate for city council in her hometown who had pledged to build a playground in Donna's neighborhood. Donna was 9 at the time. Decades later, she's still going strong. Over the years, Donna Brazile has worked on 7 presidential campaigns and became the first African-American woman to manage a national campaign when she ran Al Gore's effort in 2000. She has served as interim chair of the Democratic National Committee, a position she assumed in the middle of the contentious 2016 presidential campaign, and which she details in her new book, Hacks, the inside story of the break-ins and breakdowns that put Donald Trump in the White House, which she'll be speaking about in just a moment. But politics are not her only interest. Preparing subsequent generations for leadership and civic engagement is another focus. She has lectured at numerous colleges and universities, today as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. She's also a seasoned pundit, offering commentary on CNN, NBC, ABC, and in columns for Ms. and O magazines. She is the recipient of awards and honorary degrees too numerous to list here. But for our purposes today, we're perhaps most delighted by her status as an author. Before Hacks, Donna wrote a best-selling memoir called Cooking with Grease, Stirring the Pots in American Politics. And it's no secret that her new book has generated heated discussion in the political world since its publication earlier this month, especially among her fellow Democrats. We appreciate Donna's willingness to be here tonight to talk more about the state of her party and our nation's politics and to answer your questions. So please welcome Donna to Politics and Prose.
First of all, ladies and gentlemen, it's such a great honor to be back home. When I'm not teaching, running my mouth somewhere, this is where I typically hang out. In fact, I have been a member of Politics and Prose for a long, long time, and it's just a great honor to be home. I see so many friends, at least I still hope we're friends. And I see people who are like family, my old neighbors from Capitol Hill, and so many of you that we have been in the trenches with over the last 40 years that I've been working on behalf of the Democratic Party. So I wanted to share some observations about the book. I know that some of you probably have read the excerpts and it worked you up. And that's a good thing, because if you're not worked up about 2016, then I don't know what are you waiting for in terms of the future. I'm still worked up about what happened in 2016. I became chair of the Democratic National Committee for the second time in my life. Second time. I'm not the person that the party turns to at first. I'm the person that always come in to fill in. I'm like a substitute teacher. And I had no problem when I received that call on July 24th to go back into the headquarters of the DNC. Just raise it a little. You can't hear me? I just got off Hardball, and prior to that, Sean Hannity. So, you know. I have talked about my book today. I've talked about sexual harassment today. I've talked about the New Orleans Saints today. I've talked about so much today that at any moment I'm going to break out in song. So nobody want me to talk. But I became chair for the second time on July 24th. It wasn't a job that I wanted, but when you are called upon to serve, I deeply believe that you answer the call to serve. I have managed, as Jonathan said, a presidential campaign. I've worked on, meaning a staff person, for 7 presidential campaigns. I've been involved in 11 presidential cycles, 11. That means that before I turned 18, I was Jefferson Parish Youth Coordinator for Jimmy Carter. And that means that after Al Gore's campaign in 2004, and 2008 and 2012, and along with 2016, while I was not a paid staff person of the Clinton campaign or the Sanders campaign, I was not a paid officer of the DNC, nor was I was a paid official. I took this job on because I love my party and I love my country, and God knows I love Barack Obama. The poet Maya Angelou once said that there's no greater agony than the burden of an untold story inside of you. For me, and for many of my colleagues who worked at the DNC, the hacking of the DNC was more than just the meddling by a foreign country into our affairs. And so I was extremely worried in the aftermath of the campaign that the media would continue to talk about Hillary Clinton's emails, that Donald Trump will continue to tweet about nothing, and that the entire country would forget that your fellow citizens were hacked. And I became very, let me just say it nicely, obsessed about what had happened. Throughout the campaign, I was under an agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, where I wasn't supposed to go out and tell my truth. And I respected the fact that my country was under attack and I was not supposed to tell my truth. I began to write political columns because I was afraid that nobody would investigate, that Congress would never get around to it, and of course Donald Trump would never acknowledge that the country was hacked and what happened internally in the DNC. So for me, it all started with the hacking and my attempts to get the party as well as the government to act. The party as well as the government to act. My book is about love. Love of country and love of my party and the candidate that I wanted to help get into the Oval Office. And I have no regrets that I went over to the Democratic National Committee. That is what my party has trained me to do. My party has trained me to be an activist, an advocate, someone who doesn't go in when everything looks rosy, but someone who can go in when there are storm clouds all around. And there were a hell of a lot of storm clouds surrounding the 2016 election. So it started with the hacking and my attempts to get the party as well as the government to act. When I say the party, ladies and gentlemen, we had two known, active, what they call in the quote unquote, and I got one of my friends here, Michael Sussman, who was our cyber attorney. So if Mr. Sussman is here, Attorney Sussman, one of the best lawyers in America, you can quote me on that. And Michael Sussman, I love Michael Sussman. We were dealing with a cyber espionage campaign. And ladies and gentlemen, I went to LSU. I went to a public college. No one trained me to understand cyber espionage. I mean, I barely read that now. I hope you have a section in this bookstore because you need to take my book from political and put in the cyber espionage section. But this book covers the campaign. It tells you everything. From my perspective as the chair that had to oversee every campaign from those running from school board to those running for to the Oval Office. But the purpose is to, what I believe, drive attention and action so that we can stop this meddling and we do not allow this to happen in 2018 and beyond. Because I agree with Director Comey, former Director Comey, they will be back. I don't believe they've left. The things that you want to know are in this book, but so are the things that you need to know about cybersecurity. Yes, in the book, I tell you, do not use the word password, lowercase, as your password. I tell you that when you go to a convention and they give you one of those nice little thumb drives, Lisa, you don't go home and stick it in your computer. I mean, you don't stick anything in your computer unless you know where it came from. You have to be more, you got to be smarter and more diligent about cyber security. And that is also in the book. I was afraid that everyone would focus on the discard. Look, my emails were leaked. My emails from one account. I have 6. One account, and I got a 7. I'm at Harvard this year. Every time the winner of the Electoral College loses the popular vote, at least in the last The last 20 years, Donna Brazile get to go to Harvard. I've been up at Harvard, and I'm focusing on cybersecurity and cyber hygiene, along with Robbie Mook. He's also up at Harvard. Robbie is writing the playbook. I did the survey. Isn't that amazing? So for those of you who don't think we don't get along, we get along. We just disagree. We're Democrats. And before my book was released, I gave everybody a heads up. Not that I had to. I am 57 years old, and I don't report to anybody but the good Lord above. I'm humble enough to understand. But I wanted them to know that I was going to tell some hard truths because I lived it. I experienced it. It made me uncomfortable. And someone asked me the other day when I was in my beloved hometown of Louisiana, why didn't you quit? And after being on the road for almost 3 weeks, it made me cry. And I'm a tough old lady. It made me cry because why would I quit when I wanted to see Hillary in the White House? And why would I quit when my staff, my friends, my colleagues, they were under attack? I would never leave the battlefield as long as I had people out there fighting on my behalf and your behalf, on behalf of those who were running. And so this was a crime. The disinformation, and not just the hacking, was a crime. And no one has been brought to justice yet. Thank you. And it was a crime not just committed against us, the Democrats. It was a crime committed against every American. And that is still my passion. It's like people are so obsessed with the political horse race that when the jockeys are being murdered, they only seem to care what effect that it would have on the upcoming race. I watched it. It hurt. It especially hurt when you tried to go on television and people said, how do you know? How do you know? We knew. I wish it wasn't happening. In fact, after my briefing, after we all walked out of the Bureau, and by the way, that was my first time at the Bureau. There's a first time for everything. My first time in prison was when Alan Gross was down in Cuba, and I went there to advocate for his release. And now my first time in the Bureau was during the hacking. I pray to God I don't have to go to the Bureau, don't have to go to prison, don't have to go to jail. I just want to make gumbo and drink wine. And so, ladies and gentlemen, before I open up, our data was stolen. They corrupted our files. Confidential information was leaked, including donor and staff personal information, social security numbers. We had to notify 47 states that they were in infraction. Unlike the Watergate break-in, I was only 11 at the time, the thieves were not domestic burglars. They were not domestic burglars. They were intelligence agents of the Russian government seeking to install a president more favorable to their international agenda. And if you don't believe me, I have traveled to Germany, France, and the Netherlands this year. And I wasn't going there for vacation. I was going there to learn what steps they are taking to protect their democracy, to protect the integrity of their election systems. We have a lot to learn, ladies and gentlemen. The burglars did not use flashlights. I wish. And they did not use those lock picks. They used advanced technology to steal electronic files. When Donald Trump would often say, well, the DNC was being careless, I felt like saying, dude, sir, Mr. President, it's not as if we could have went to Staples and bought some anti-Russian malware, spyware, magical cream. This was a sophisticated campaign, and we needed the help of professionals. And yes, it is true that by the time the DNC figured out, because they went to our vendor. It's like going to Best Buy, you go to the Geek Squad, and when you want to return something or you want to find out something and not go to the management, well, it didn't get to the management until late April. But once it got to the management moved as quickly as they possibly could to begin remediation efforts and other important steps that we use. It's all in the book, Hacker House, and you'll meet and listen, read about some great Americans who came to our aid along with the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. Sean Henry is another one of my bros. I mean, I walked into the DNC with a bunch of sisters. I walked out with a bunch of brothers, too. And I'm proud to know them, and I'm proud to recommend them anytime you need them because they did a phenomenal job in helping us to clean up our system. Now, the DNC employees and donors whose personal information was broadcast on the internet suffered intense harassment and violent threats. Our operations were disrupted, our property incurred significant damage, and in short, the DNC was a victim of a crime. At one point I said we should just take yellow tape and wrap it around the DNC building, shut it down, and go somewhere else. Because that's just how bad it was. And so this is my book. This is my truth. I had the audacity to write it. I had the audacity also to tell it the way I enjoy telling it. I also had the pain of reliving everything I experienced once more. And it's very hard for somebody like me who has been in the trenches all my life to leave the battlefield not just scarred and bloody, but believing that your country needs to understand. On October 18, 2016, after 2 weeks of trying to get Sean Spicer before he morphed into Melissa McCarthy, after trying to get Sean Spicer and Reince Priebus to help us. Imagine if you're the chair of the Democratic Party, and there are two major political parties in the country. We both have extensive data files of every American and your voter habits. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. So we know when you donate to us, we know when you vote for us, not what you do in the ballot box, but when you go out and vote. But we also know a little bit more about you because we're able to match that with other data. Similar to when you go to CVS, I have a godson who is now 17 months. And, you know, in those formative months, I went and bought bottles and nipples and Pampers and everything else in between. And every time I go to CVS, they want to know if I need Pampers. I'm like, I'm not there yet. Well, as campaign professionals, we have data, we have algorithm, we have a way of assessing all of you and everything that you bring to the table. But that was being corrupted. Those files were already under attack. Your information, your personal information, many of you, that information was being exposed and leaked. And so it really worried me as the campaign went on and on and on. Of what kind of walking list would I give to you if you wanted to go in precinct 34, which is not far from here, and walk, you know, your block to get people out for Hillary? I wasn't assured. I really didn't feel confident that that list would hold. And we learned on election day that list did not hold. And so when Secretary Clinton the other day said, we don't know if this election was legitimate, I had to put that in the amen corner because every night that Donald Trump would go out there and say, that Donna Brazile, that Donna, you know the way he talks. I mean, he moves his hair and it doesn't move back. And every night I could predict that my phone would start ringing and I started getting crazy calls. I used to tell people the difference from being a campaign manager and a campaign chair is that when you're the campaign manager, the first black woman, they just call you and do the N-word and drop it. And I'm from the South, and my mother used to say it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. But this time I said these are not Americans because the combination of the N-word, the C-word, the B-word, and the M-word, I said, wait a minute. Now, no American put those four together. All right? I mean, Americans, you know, we're strategic with our vowel. Our vulgarity is of a certain taste. It's like knowing the difference between, you know, a Burger King, you know, and a McDonald's burger. I mean, you know one was charcoal. This was something that was not American. And I knew, ladies and gentlemen, and just bear with me, I'm going to say something that might disrupt you even more. I knew that something was going on with Black Lives Matter. Now, of course, I'm black. Have I checked lately? Yes. But some of the discord and some of the information that was being put out in the name of Black Lives Matter and some of the activities that were being thrown out on the internet. I once received a call from my niece, Brianna. She's a law student down in Louisiana. And she said, Auntie Donna, I'm on my way to I-10 and I-12, and we're going to shut down traffic. I said, you better not bring you know what out there to shut down. I said, where you getting that from? Oh, it's Facebook. I mean, now we know this was being stirred up. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time I finished this book, I recruited a journalist. Yeah, I recruited a journalist. I know how tough people can be on you. And so I recruited a journalist to help me verify all the things. Every time I submitted a chapter, I said, Danielle, I say, here's my chapter. Go back and you talk to the Clinton CFO. Danielle, go back, you talk to this. But by the time we finished concluding our book, I said, Danielle, I still can't figure out who in the hell gave those damn Russians all of our data, corrupted it, and all of a sudden they're targeting young black kids in these damn states. Did I say damn states? Yes. And I knew there was a connection, but I couldn't put my finger on it because of what was stirring up internally in the black community. Come to find out, with a few rubles, you can stir up over, a million clicks. Just 8,600 rubles, and I don't even know what that translates into American dollars. I'm from Louisiana. I deal with small change. But ladies and gentlemen, this was a campaign like none other. And we saw it in real time. When Donald Trump mentioned my name, not only did the threats start, but the bots, the trolls. And I'll say this, and then I'll close it because I want to spend as much time talking with all of you. On October 7th, 2016, I really thought that Donald Trump would lose the election. I really did. That day, the DNI and DHS concluded that the Russians did attack the DNC. And I was gratified. I was with Bernie Sanders that day. We were up in New Hampshire, and Bernie came over to me and I said, do you see this news? And I was joyful. He put his arm around me and he said, I'm glad that this is finally going to get over. I said, man, I am so glad. Now the American people will know. I mean, it was one of those moments, and I said, this is great. And then Bernie said, he changed the subject, and he said, how's Seth Rich's parents? And I said to him that they're okay, they're hanging on, they're holding on. And I told him that I was going back to his synagogue in a few months and that I would keep him posted. And he has continued to inquire about Seth and his parents. A few hours later, it wasn't that long, that we learned about the Access Hollywood tape. And I don't need to tell y'all the lurid details of, being a celebrity. You can grab onto somebody's genitals because you can. And I thought, oh my God, this man is gone. We got the Russian thing now and this. And then within another hour, the WikiLeaks dumping of John Podesta's emails. They were hacked, they were stolen, and then they were put out every day like this to tell you one story, to influence the narrative of that day, and to sow more division within our party. What better way to defeat Hillary Clinton, to discredit her, but to take her chairman's emails and to put it out over the next 30 days. I can almost tell you every day what was put out, and that's why you couldn't hear her message on the economy. That's why you couldn't hear what she was saying about education, because all you were being fed every day by lazy media. A lazy media. You were being fed this drip. And then for some of us, we had to even try to prove, well, did WikiLeaks, was this your email? Let me check. What's the date? What's in it? And that's what I had to do. Meanwhile, we're under attack. We didn't get those Russians out until 10/21, and it wasn't until 10/26 that we were able to finally say that they're gone. But by that time, after our briefing with Homeland Security, we knew that several of our election systems were under attack. We also knew that Homeland Security was now trying to make our elections a critical infrastructure. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say one last thing before I shut up. Barack Obama tried to help us. He tried to go to Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and all those on the Hill and say, we got to do something. Our country's under attack. Mitch McConnell said, don't tilt the scales. Nancy Pelosi tried to help us. She went to Paul Ryan and she said, we got a problem, sir, and we got to get this done. And he said, don't tip the scales. Mr. Lujan went to his counterpart at the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee because the DCCC was being hacked. And they said, we're not going to abide by any rules. We're going to use this to try to destroy you. And of course, as I mentioned, I went to Sean, I went to Prose. There's a famous photo of me on October 4th at the vice presidential debate where it looked like I wanted to bite Reince Priebus just to get his attention, like I was a vampire. I just really wanted him to understand that we're Americans. We're Americans. Our democracy is who we are, is what we stand for. And if our elections are not secured, if we don't have some form of integrity into our process, then how can we be assured that when we cast our ballots, they will be counted properly? So we have a lot of work to do as we prepare for the all-important 2018 midterm elections. And I'll say this before open it up to you. This book is not about Hillary Clinton. This is Donna Brazile's story. Hillary wrote her book. It's probably here, What Happened. It's not about Bernie Sanders. Bernie wrote his book. Barack Obama is going to write his book. There's also a book about his portraits and everything. This is my story. This is a story of a kid who started at the age of 9 and at 57 was still willing to go out there and fight another battle on behalf of my party and my country. I wasn't paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign, and I've been very insulted by some of the quote-unquote things that have been said about my intentions. I was even somewhat confused by those who said I wanted to see Democrats lose in Virginia when I came down from Cambridge on my own nickel and dime, which I always do, to help candidates win that race. In fact, most people in this room don't know that Justin Fairfax was my colleague in the Gore campaign. I hired him as Tipper assistant. And now he's the lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia. And most people have not known, but over the last 6 months since leaving the DNC, I continue to do fundraising for the Democratic National Committee, although I am not a paid officer. And most people don't know that while I was not paid, the chair of the party was paid because she had an agreement with the Clinton campaign. And I wasn't paid. And I was driving myself from Crestwood to Capitol Hill every day. I didn't have a driver. I didn't have a car because I sold it. And I didn't want a body person. I didn't want any consultants. And ladies and gentlemen, a lot of my friends who are consultants in Washington, D.C. with no big contracts, getting $25,000 a month, not showing up for work, haven't seen them in a month, you're getting $25,000. I gave them a 30-day notice. It's over. The gravy train is over. I'm not saying you shouldn't make money. I'm saying that I can't pay you when we're broke. When I'm trying to get literature and paper and pamphlets all across this country, not just in the battleground states, but non-battleground states. I am a native of Louisiana. I was criticized for sending money down to Louisiana. You damn right I'm going to send money to Louisiana. But I'm also going to send it down to Texas and Alabama and Mississippi, South Carolina, and I sent it to Illinois. You know why? I didn't want President Obama to be embarrassed. I was worried about the turnout in Chicago, and I wanted to do everything in my power as chair of the party, not the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton. I'm going to do everything in my power to help turn out the vote in Illinois. So I was not on the daily calls. I can't answer for the strategy. I didn't spend the billions, the over, well, let's just say it was 900 and something million dollars. All I know is that when Donald Trump said, "What the hell do you have to lose?" on August 19th to a black audience, this woman wanted to respond. Because I don't let somebody come into my neighborhood and cuss me out, insult me, and I can't get up and say, "Mr. President, At that point, he was Mr. Trump. But Mr. Trump, here's what we have to lose. We have to lose Obamacare. We have to lose voting rights. We have to lose climate change. I knew everything we could lose. But by going into a black community, saying that, and here I'm the chair of the party, raising my own money for the Democratic National Committee, and I could not direct where it would go. So on August 19th, my response was to write a column in USA Today. So that joint fundraising agreement and that addendum made it hard for me to do my job. And I didn't tear it up because I did not want to tear down the candidate. I told Bernie what I knew to be true, that it was not rigged, but I did not like the cancer that I found. I promised I would tell him that, but I also told Bernie, and Bernie agreed, that he needed to get himself on the road like me because we had to turn it up a little bit. There wasn't enough heat. There was too much complacency. Too many people thought that Hillary was going to win. She was going to win the 18 states in the District of Columbia, get 242 electoral votes, pick off of this one and pick off of that one, and Donald Trump had no path. And what Donald Trump did was pick our lock because we left the door open. So there are many ways to read my book. You can read it because you like history. You can read it because you like drama. You can read it because every now and then you need a good thriller in your life. But I would hope that you would read it because, like me, you care about the future of our democracy. You care about the future of America. And that, in telling my story, if you just take one aspect of it, that is, we are Americans, and our democracy matters. As a child who grew up in the segregated South, I found my seat at the table by bringing in a folding chair. But I knew there would be a place at the table at the DNC and the Democratic Party because my party enabled me, a poor child who grew up in the bayous, it enabled me to get a head start and healthy start. It gave my community resources, and we got the Civil Rights Act passed and the Voting Rights Act passed. And I got involved in politics because I not only wanted to give back but pay it forward. I'm an American. I'm a Democrat. I don't dislike Republicans. I have lots of Republican friends. I have lots of independent friends, and I got a lot of friends who I still don't know where they are. But they drink good wine, and I like them. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you in advance. I hope you read the book. If you decide that you don't want to buy it for yourself, buy it for a friend. The holidays are coming up. Black Friday should be a good day to go ahead and finish up all your shopping, holiday shopping. Just get 5 copies. Encourage people to read it, to learn the lessons. See what mistakes we've made so that we can go out there next year and do a better job. I'm a Democrat, but I'm also an American. I love my country, and I was proud to serve as your chair. For those of you who are Democrats, I was proud to serve as your chair, not once but twice. And don't worry, you won't have me to beat around because I'm going to do some other things in my life, but you will have me every day out there on the battlefield for justice and equality for all. So thank you, and God bless you, and I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. It was a real thrill. I went to the DNC convention as a voting delegate from Maryland. It was a highlight.
Thank you.
It's my observation that the public at large does not take this hacking thing very seriously. Can you comment about that?
Well, if you compare where we are today to where we were a year ago, I think that there's more awareness as a result of the investigations that are going on Capitol Hill, as well as what Director Mueller is doing. I do believe that as citizens, we really need to ask some tough questions. I want to know about all of those voting systems across the country that the Russians tried to penetrate. I want to know about the e-poll books and the vendors that had their data compromised. And clearly, I would like to see that every campaign staffer get the kind of cyber hygiene lesson so that they know what to do in the case of their emails or their personal information being corrupted. So I think we're better today than we were a year ago, but we have a long way to go before we can improve our election system. I'm worried about 2018. I'm worried about 2020. 2018 is the ball game because in 2018, over 3/4 of the country will select governors, and those governors will have veto power over the redistricting maps. And while everybody in this room is probably trying to figure out, well, which sexy person are you going to support in 2020? The last time I was on a paid to work on a campaign was Al Gore. And in 2008, my friends used to call me and say, Donna, you're a woman. You got to support Hillary. Yes, I'm a woman. I like Hillary. I've known her for 30 years. No, my family would say, you're black. You better support Barack Obama. Yes, I know I'm black, and I like Barack Obama. And then I was like, yes, I can do this. I can do this. And I said, you know what I told them? I'm getting old and grumpy. I might support John McCain. So back off.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of awareness. We need more awareness, which is also the reason why I wrote this book. And thank you, and I love your hair. I've been trying to get that purple. It's just turning out blue. But with a little bit more patience in the beauty parlor, I'm going to get that. And if you have any secrets, let me know. This is one that Victoria won't share, just me and you. And thank you. Maryland got a great election. Hello, how you doing?
Yes, my name is Asa Gordon. I'm the executive director of the Douglas Institute of Government. I want to talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
And in the last 40% of the last 55 elections has gone to the candidate that did not win the popular vote. In 1824, James Madison returned. He said, well, we got this electoral college, but what is really making it bad is something called winner take all. The father of the Constitution tried to get an amendment to the Constitution to ban winner take all. That's your father. Now, the question is this. There are 11 states that award their electors on a winner take all basis that is not based on state law. In states where they don't have a winner take all law, will you ask that the Democratic parties of those states where there's no winner take all demand that they be counted in percentage that they win the popular vote?
Good question, sir. And I recognize that we have a lot of work to do, especially with the reform or the abolishment of the Electoral College. Several states, including Maryland, now are undergoing that same conversation. Thus far, it's only blue states. We need some red states. But this is one of the issues, along with campaign finance reform and other reforms that I think are necessary for us to proceed. One other thing is that, as you know, there's no constitutional right to vote. That is what Justice Scalia, the former justice, said. No, please don't, because I don't want, But I agree with you. We need to. This needs to be part of our conversation. And as a citizen, I think you should continue to engage people in this conversation by writing columns and educating people.
You mentioned that your book is about love, and it seems to me in reading the book that it's about unrequited love. The Democratic Party is still taking African Americans for granted. If we look at the recent election in Virginia, we see that it was basically the organization and black vote of black women that basically put the Democrats into office. When I was an undergraduate student, they said, to the victor goes the spoils. When are we going to get our spoils?
Well, let me just say this, and I'm a Democrat. I support my party, and like many other women of color, I want to see a Democrat elected because I think Democrats will bring about the kind of change that we all wish to see as Americans. I would hope that in future elections, one lesson is that when you have a candidate like Donald Trump or anyone else, and they are actively pursuing the votes of people of color, we have to respond. We didn't give them a response to what Donald Trump said. And you cannot just respond with a political column. You got to respond by educating and activating people. We had a 6% drop in African American voters, a 5% drop in Asian American voters. We had a huge drop with millennials. And one of the lessons that I think we should learn is that we got to talk to everybody. We cannot take nobody for granted. Not white college educated women, not black women, not white men, not Hispanic men, not Asian American women. Let's treat every citizen with the kind of dignity and respect they deserve to get the information they need so they can make an informed opinion. And I agree with you, and I'll sign your book, sir, because I love that unrequited love. It's love.
Okay, very
It's
good.
love. Appreciate you.
I've known you a long time.
You have.
From the city, from local politics. And the only thing I want to say to you is thank you for not going quietly into the night
Well, thank you.
and for not being Patsy the slave.
Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We love you. We admire you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I think you've done, and I can say this as a lifelong Democrat and someone who has done grassroots politicking work. I think you've done the Democratic Party a real favor, And they need to take what you have said seriously and getting about the business of cleaning house and doing what needs to be done. My question is, I could not get a yard sign. Now, my neighbor had one. I didn't understand it. As many signs as I was able to get, pay or not, for Obama, for everybody that has run. I saw signs for people running in Maryland and other places, but none for Hillary in this city, in South Carolina, in Florida, anywhere, okay? Why couldn't I get a yard sign? Somebody told me my neighbor had one, but her daughter worked for the campaign somewhere. Why couldn't I get a yard sign? Somebody said go online.
They were for sale. The bulk of the yard signs were for sale, and what we did at the DNC was that we made our own signs and we distributed our signs to all 50 states and the District of Columbia. But that was one of those bones of contention that I had with Brooklyn, is that I would go to Pennsylvania, I would go to Florida, I would go to the so-called battleground states, and there was Trump signs everywhere. You know, the funny thing about the Trump people, the Trump campaign, and I would go to Las Vegas, Clark County, and there would be an empty office, but it was full of signs. The Clinton office was filled with people, but no material or literature. So it was like, okay, and everybody was working on their little machines. And I'm like, wow, but that was an issue.
And this is serious business in a lot of communities. And people in churches and grassroots and going door to door and knowing people and talking to people. What impact do you think Obama having won against Hillary had some impact on the turnout of the black voters this time around?
Well,
the anger that was left there.
Let me say this. I didn't see any anger. I didn't see any evidence of that. I thought President Obama did a phenomenal job, like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton did in 2012 for his reelection. They were, and Michelle Obama, she was fantastic. She went to several states. At first, they said she was going to do 3 events, then 5 events, and before you know it, Michelle was up to 10, 11, and 12, and she was phenomenal. Thank you, and it's good to see you.
It's good to see you, too. We love you. Keep fighting a good fight, and drink wine for a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next question.
Thanks for taking the question. Looking at what Senator Gillibrand said recently about Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton should have resigned, and also looking at what happened in the 2016 election with Hillary Clinton losing, do you think Democratic candidates heading into the midterms should campaign with the Clintons?
Absolutely. No doubt. And let me tell you something. Look, I worked for Bill Clinton and Al Gore, okay, part of my formative years. Bill Clinton was impeached. In 1998, I went over to the DNC. I left my job with Eleanor Holmes Norton and Dick Gephardt to go over to the DCCC and the DSCC and the DNC, and we came within 5 seats. Bill Clinton paid a huge price. And I know everybody want to relitigate it today, and rather than talk about Roy Moore, a man who has been banned from the mall, and not want to talk about sexual harassment is a pervasive problem in our society and the workplace. It's not just celebrities, it's not just politicians, it's not just comedians. Sexual harassment is a pervasive problem in the workplace. And rather than address this issue, we're trying to make this out of a political issue, like, oh, should he do this or should this is a pervasive problem in the workplace. And we need to give encouragement to the people who are coming forward with their story. I believe the women. And we should stop trying to distract from the issue at hand, which is sexual harassment. It is immoral, it's wrong, and it doesn't matter if it occurred 30 years ago or if it occurred last night. We need to speak out and give voice to what is happening in our society. So the Clintons, let me tell you this. I am grateful for their service. Bill Clinton was in Puerto Rico yesterday. I know a little bit about, not having running water after a storm. I know a little bit about what it's like to have your roof blown off your head after a storm. I am proud that Bill Clinton has continued his service. He's not perfect. No, I'm not perfect. John A. said he or she without sin. I'll put she. I know the men who wrote the Bible didn't understand that women had a role too. But cast the first stone. The Clintons have been extremely effective in helping the Democratic Party recruit the next generation of candidates and much more. We need Bernie Sanders out there. We need Hillary Clinton out there. We need Joe Biden out there. When your party's been in the wilderness, when you've lost 932 state legislative seats, 11 gubernatorial seats, when you've lost over 63 congressional seats, we can't afford to be going out there and say, Donna, sit your butt home. Bill, sit your butt home. We need everybody to get their butts up and go out there and win in 2018 or beyond. That's where I stand. And look,
Okay.
thank you, sir. Sir, don't get me worked up before my wine. And this is water. Now remember the story of water to wine. Water to wine. That was in the Bible. Mary wanted some wine at the wedding. Arrington Dixon. And you know what happened? Jesus listened. He listened to his mother, and then he got the party started. So be careful. How you doing?
Good. So you spoke at length about the Russian propaganda. But what are your thoughts on what I think is a much more effective propaganda war led by the Koch network? And it's also a much longer-term plan. It's been going on for like 35 years or so, and they have a lot more money, and it's, I think, more difficult to stop. So what are your thoughts?
And you saw what happened in Virginia. And Ed Gillespie, in my judgment, I've known Ed for a long time. The Ed Gillespie who ran that campaign, who tried to be Donald Trump, was not effective because I think voters are rejecting that kind of politics. People in this country are really sick and tired of the negative ads that really, try to destroy us as Americans, whether you're using the so-called story of ex-felons who've served their time and making them out to be criminals, preying on the innocent, or you're using a violent gang saying, which was totally untrue, that Ralph Northam had something to do with that. So, yeah, the Koch brothers have used their resources to try to build a network of not just conservatives, but to try to put in certain kinds of conservatives. What you see now happen in the conservative movement, although I'm a Democrat, I used to pretend to be a conservative when I was on TV. I'm like, let me just think like conservatives. I would wear red and think, okay, maybe I can think this way, and always got confused when I thought that way. But the Republican, we talk about the Democratic Party in here. The Republican Party is also at a crossroads. They are also trying to figure out their future. I mean, they are being divided as we speak between those who support the kind of politics that Trump represents and those who want to go back to the common sense conservative values that Ronald Reagan espoused. So we need to be very careful whenever you see these billionaires, and I don't care which flavor they come in, but whenever they're trying to influence our election, to have certain type of candidates that use divisive tactics, then it's going to be very hard for us to end this hyper-partisanship. And thank you for your great question, sir. Buy the book; it's really good.
What would you say to statements by top-level independent intelligence analysts, by authors who have written cutting-edge pieces in The Intercept and The Nation, who make the case that the hacking of the DNC was scientifically impossible to have occurred in any other place but the East Coast?
Yeah, I read that. I read that piece, and I also read the rebuttal of that piece that The Nation put out. It was called the VIP program, where former veteran intelligence professionals said that it was an inside job. This was not. We had it verified. We had it documented that this was not a leak. It was a hack. And these active measures we've seen in other places. So I would tell you that when The Nation put out the rebuttal to that story, I read that as well. And I think much more should be said and done about what we experienced, what we shared. And when you read my book, especially the chapter on Hacker House, you'll get a great sense of what we went up against. Read the book. It's really great.
We do have time for two more in line, it looks like.
Hi, I was wondering what you feel about having, in place of the Electoral College, which I think should be scrapped, a direct election for president based on a runoff system like France and Brazil has. And I know in your state of Louisiana you have that
Oh,
type of
God,
system.
don't talk about my state of Louisiana, our election system. The good news is that Louisiana, finally, New Orleans, the largest city, has a female mayor. We now follow in the footsteps of Baton Rouge and Shreveport. Can you imagine that? The largest city in the state is following the footsteps of the second largest city in the state and the third largest city in the state. And we finally did it on the eve of our 300th anniversary. So what do I feel that should be in place of it? You know, I haven't studied it. It's one of the topics I hope to get to before I leave campus. If not, I'll go back to Georgetown with it. We got a lot of options that we need to consider. I just haven't come up with one yet. But thank you for your great question.
And this is the last question of the night.
Thank you. I think the biggest...
What's on your hat, sir? Dump Trump. I see your T-shirt. And what does that say? Trump. Oh, de-great in America. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I like blue. It goes with my hair better. Thank you, Bo. Trump, de-great in America. We appreciate you, sir, and already I'm going to find something to give you back so that...
I got some gifts here.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right, here's my question. As a child of the 60s, I was here for Lawrence O'Donnell's 68, and I was stupid enough and maybe naive enough to say in 1968, I just can't wait to the year 2000. By then, our generation will be in, and sanity will prevail, justice will prevail. Some of my friends said, you have your head up your ass. I said, well, perhaps I'm a bit naive and overly optimistic. And ever since then, every 4 years or 8 years, we have yin and yang. We don't have a plateau of consistency. We have the Republicans coming in. I want to take back everything because government sucks. Every man for himself. Let's get rid of Social Security. Then the Democrats come in and try to restore it. So here's my plan, and I'm serious about this, for 2018 and every non-presidential year. The strongest drive in nature is sex. Don't worry where I'm going with this. The cicadas sleep for 17 years, awaken for 2 days, have sex, and they die. The young people, everyone needs to know that the year of the presidential election is the foreplay. 2 years later is the consummation. The person you want to become president becomes president, and then people sit on their ass and they don't do anything, saying, I've done my job, and you don't elect the legislatures needed to implement the plans that the president had, which caused you to vote. So there's got to be something in off-year elections that we go from, 56% of the vote to 27%? It's insanity. And that, for me, explains the yin and the yang.
Well, I don't know if I need a sexual metaphor. I probably like sports. I mean, the Republicans and certain voters treat every year like the World Series, and Democrats treat politics like the World Cup every 4 years. It is absolutely imperative. If I leave anything with you all tonight, 2018 is the ball game. 75% of the American people will vote for governor. And in this region, that matters because we have not just Maryland, but we also have Pennsylvania. This is an important election cycle for 2020. So I would hope that the American people, 33 senatorial seats up, 36 governors that include the so-called territories, Puerto Rico, Virgin Island, so forth, but also we also looking at all 435 members of Congress. Many of them are in reserve seats because they've been gerrymandered so much. So I encourage all of you to think about what role you can play. And finally, on this note, there's a great awakening taking place in our country today. All throughout the country, as I continue to travel around, people are excited about getting involved. They may not be getting involved in a particular party, but they're finding their seats at the table. A lot of the millennials who stayed home last year are now engaged. They're being re-engaged, and they're the generation that we should try to encourage to run for office in 2018 and beyond. If there's one thing I want to leave with you all tonight, in addition to getting a copy of the book and let me sign it, you can tell I've been well trained in this, right? But one thing I want to encourage you to do as you prepare to gather with your friends and family over Thanksgiving, please give thanks to all of our men and women who are serving our great country. Give thanks to those who are constantly out there each and every day trying to do the best for all of us as Americans. And also find time to praise one another. We're not so bad. We're a good country. There's so many great people. There are so many wonderful ideas that we all have. Let's find time to listen to one another, learn from one another, so that we can all begin to heal and prepare ourselves for a very important election cycle. So thank you. I hope you, those of you who read the book, I hope you enjoyed it. For those of you who plan to read it, I can tell you right now, when you touch it, you better make sure you got a roux on the stove that you got to get back to, because this one has some hot sauce. And God bless you all. And thank you, Washington, D.C. Thank you, America.